A few days ago, I covered something that shook this community pretty hard, and if you missed that video, here's the short version. Clips resurfaced from a 2019 HuniCast birthday livestream where Michael Kovac, the voice of Jax in the amazing digital Circus, and Ashley Nichols, who voices Zubul, were joking around a racial slur that started as a misheard username in chat. The situation kept going for nearly 20 minutes. Both of them apologized publicly once the clips went viral, and Gooseworks herself had also left an unfortunate comment in that same stream. The fandom split hard over whether to accept those apologies, with some arguing that 7 years was enough time for people to change, and others pointing out that everyone involved was an adult who knew what they were doing. It was a messy situation that left a real mark on how a lot of people in this community see the voices behind these characters, and it had barely started to settle when, at the LevelUp Con 2026, someone decided to treat all of it like material for a bit. That someone was a YouTuber who goes by Plainrock, who showed up to the convention, got himself near the glitch booth, and filmed himself joking about that exact controversy while standing right there in front of their presence at the event.
Yo, it's my neck. What's up, nigga? Bye, nigga. NEGA. Yeah. Cancel.
The part that I find genuinely difficult to understand is that he then uploaded the video to Twitter himself, because there is a meaningful difference between saying something stupid in a moment and actively choosing to broadcast it to your audience afterward. The clip spread quickly, and the community's reaction made it very clear that people were not interested in treating this as harmless content. Baldwin Voices put it directly, "This is abysmal. I hope Glitch speaks up and denounces this behavior. If they don't, their silence will only condone it." That comment came about an hour before Glitch released their official statement, and when it arrived, it was not the kind of measured corporate language you might expect. I want you to read the whole thing because the tone says as much as the content does. "We were made aware of horrific and hateful behavior from a specific individual around our Glitch booth today, and we have contacted LevelUp staff to take action and have them removed and permanently banned. We have also told our staff not to serve him. Others featured in that video, or anyone seen exhibiting any behavior that would make members of our community feel unsafe or unwanted. These idiots are not representative of our community and fans, and we want to make any Glitch event as safe as possible for all. We condemn absolutely any hateful, discriminatory, or dumb f***wit behavior. Be kind to each other, and if you can't, then piss off. We don't want you here." I genuinely did not expect a studio statement to include the phrase "dumb f***wit behavior," but here we are, and it is hard not to notice that Glitch chose to be as direct and unambiguous as possible rather than taking a safer, more diplomatic route. They contacted the convention staff, banned the individual, instructed their own team not to serve him or anyone seen behaving similarly, and made clear that this kind of behavior has no place at their events. As far as institutional responses go, it was fast, and it was firm. What Plainrock did next is worth mentioning, because after Glitch's statement went up, he quoted it on Twitter with the comment, "Who could they possibly be talking about?" which tells you something about how he was reading the situation. Rather than going quiet or reflecting on the response his video had generated, he leaned into it, which led LVLUP to point out something that reframes the whole thing in a different light. Why would you do this to the official Glitch account? Also, reminder that he's monetized, so any interaction gives him money. That is a fair thing to keep in mind when deciding how much energy to direct towards someone whose content thrives on exactly this kind of attention, because engagement, including the outraged kind, is still engagement. And that is a dynamic worth understanding a little more clearly, because it is not unique to this situation. There is a category of content creator that has figured out that outrage is one of the most reliable traffic sources on the internet, and the formula is straightforward. Do something that provokes a community with a passionate fan base, post it yourself before anyone else can, and then sit back while the replies, the quote tweets, the reaction videos, and the comment sections do the rest of the work. Every person who engages, even to say this was wrong, is feeding the same algorithm. The frustrating part is that there is no clean way out of that loop, because staying silent feels like indifference, and speaking up feels like participation, and both of those options end up serving the same result. What LVLUP pointed out is not a minor footnote to this story. It is actually the most important thing to keep in mind when deciding how to respond to something like this, because the line between holding someone accountable and amplifying their reach is a lot thinner than it looks, and people who build their presence on controversy tend to know exactly where that line is and how to stand right on top of it. But regardless of whether this was meant as a joke, a bid for clicks, or something Plain Rock genuinely did not think through, the context it happened in makes it harder to brush off than it might seem on the surface. LevelUp Con is a public event, and the amazing digital circus has a fan base that includes a lot of younger viewers and families. Whatever was going through his head in that moment, he said something he should not have said in a space where people of all ages were present, standing next to a booth representing a studio whose audience includes children. That is not a setting where the intent behind the joke changes much about the impact of making it. The irony that some people were quick to point out, though, is that Glitch responded decisively to an outsider doing this at their convention, while the earlier controversy involving their own voice actors had not received the same kind of clear, public condemnation from the studio. Alco_RR addressed that directly. You couldn't even condemn your own team for saying a slur. You deserve it 100%. That is a minority position compared to the overall reaction. But it is not an unreasonable one to hold, and it points to a genuine inconsistency that the community has not forgotten just because a new situation came along. The broader response, though, was largely in support of how Glitch handled it. Isaiah Vinson one wrote, "No wonder why you guys are currently the king or queen of indie animations, always taking the W one by one, and f those pricks who dares to ruin your and the community's reputations." Cine Addict added, "Thank you so much for addressing this, Glitch. It means a lot. People that act like that don't belong in the community." Ernie Bay probably captured the mood of a lot of people with, "You know it's bad when Glitch swears." And then there was Violets029, who asked something much simpler. Can people please be nice to each other for once? Which, at a convention built around a show about people navigating a strange world together, does not feel like an unreasonable thing to want. What separates this from the controversy I covered in the previous video is the question of intent, because the 2019 stream was old footage that resurfaced years after the fact, content from a different time that came back without the people involved choosing for it to return. What happened at LevelUp Con was a deliberate decision made in real time, in public, at an event connected to the very community being affected and then amplified voluntarily by the person who made it. Those are not the same thing, even if both involve the same underlying subject matter. Every fandom eventually reaches a moment where someone pushes to see where the line actually is, and this community's response to that test was pretty unambiguous. Whether that clarity holds the next time something like this comes up is a separate question. But for now, the community, the studio, and the convention all pointed in the same direction at roughly the same speed, which is not nothing. Before I close this out, I want to say something directly about the previous video on this channel. A lot of people in the comments felt that the thumbnail and title were clickbait, and they were right to call that out. I hear you, and I am sorry for that. My intention was never to pile on to the controversy or make it bigger than it needed to be, just to share the news the way this channel always covers what happens in the amazing digital circus world. But the framing did not reflect that intention, and I understand why it bothered people. I will do better. Did Glitch respond well, or should they have also addressed the earlier controversy involving their own voice actors? And what do you think about Plain Rock continuing to joke about it even after the statement dropped? Leave it in the comments, because this community's perspective on all of this is genuinely worth hearing.